Welcome to the Word Weaver podcast, a literary place in cyberspace where I share tangible tips, tricks, and words of wisdom to help you achieve your dream of writing a book. I'm your host, Louise Johnson, a writer and the author of Behind the Red Door. Let's dive into today's chapter. Welcome back to the Word Weaver podcast. I'm your host, Louise Claire Johnson. And in today's episode, we are diving into the top 5 productivity hacks that will help you become a more efficient writer. These are 5 hacks, tools, time management, tips and tricks of the trade that I personally try to implement, and I always revert back to, especially when I'm feeling particularly sluggish when it comes to a writing project. I really need kind of an extra boost of motivation, and I need one of these hacks or one of these tools to kind of get me there, to push me over the finish line. I also find they're extremely beneficial when you're just starting out on a new writing project. If you've been staring at the blank page, if you haven't been feeling motivated to sit down and write, which starting is always the hardest part. We get in our own heads, we can talk ourselves out of it. There's always something else pulling at our attention that we think should take precedent over our writing. We are very bad at prioritizing writing a book because it's one of those things that you don't get instant gratification from. It's a really long process, and you don't know if at the end of the day you're even going to see a finished book on shelf. So it's hard to devote the time to something without knowing if there's an ROI, a return on your investment. That's why it's easier for us to do little menial tasks or other work that is revenue generating, or things where you get to see immediate results. If you clean a messy kitchen, you get the reward of a clean kitchen at the end of the day. If you make a meal, you get the reward of a finished dinner. But what I want to really emphasize and instill in all of you is that writing a book is important. If you are feeling that pull or even that little whisper of this is something you want to do in your life, we get one shot at this thing. We get one shot at life. Make it count. You don't want to wake up later in life and have that feeling of regret, like, oh, I wish I had taken the time or set aside the time to finish that book or that manuscript that I really wanted to write. And I just let life get in the way. It's so easy to do. If you've been doing that, I do that every now and then as well. It's really easy to let life sweep us up, and we get caught in it because we're getting the rewards for it. So I want to validate you in that I know it's hard, but we only have about a month and a half left of the year. Set aside time in 2025 in the new year and make this a priority. The book, unfortunately, won't write itself. It needs you to sit down in the chair and put word after word after word. So we're going to get there with these 5 productivity hacks. You can mix and match. You can have them in your arsenal to revert back to if you ever get stuck or you're really needing kind of that push to get going on a new manuscript. Let's get into it. So the very first productivity hack is something that I use on the daily. You may or may not have already heard of it before, but it's the Pomodoro Technique. And this is a time management tool where you work in 25-minute intervals, Pomodoros, and then you get a 5-minute break. And you repeat that cycle 4 times. And at the end of the 4th cycle, you get a 15-minute break, a little bit longer. And you're kind of under pressure for those 25 minutes. You can't open your email. You can't do anything else but write in these timed intervals. It's a bit of a way of time blocking your day so you know that, okay, I'm going to do 4 Pomodoros today. And I use this free website. It's pomofocus.io. And I just put in, okay, today, what are the tasks that I need to get done? Usually it's writing related. So if I'm working on a new manuscript and I want to get a chapter done, I will write chapter 1 in one of the little task buckets, and I'll put in, okay, this will take me 4 Pomodoros to get through. And it even calculates kind of the time that you will finish by the end of the day. It'll make more sense if you go to pomofocus.io when you plug it all in. Or if I am doing kind of admin stuff, I will put in all the different tasks and I will estimate how many Pomodoros, which is a 25-minute interval, how many it'll take me. And without fail, it always takes me way more time than I estimate, which is something to not push off, but it's good to know that it usually takes you double the amount of time that you think it's going to take. Even if you've been doing this for a long time, you know how many words per minute on average you can generate. Things will get in the way. Maybe your brain's working a little bit slower that day. The coffee hasn't kicked in yet. It will, without fail, take you longer than you think to accomplish what you want in a day. So I find the Pomodoro technique really helpful for me to get down to brass tacks, to get down to business. I am not pulled to open my email or do anything else. I can do that on my 5-minute break. I can do that on my 15-minute break. Run and grab a coffee then, and just see how much you're able to get done in that 25-minute interval. A tip though is if you find that you're trying the Pomodoro technique and you're getting frustrated because you're not getting nearly as much done as you thought, it just means that you need to break that task down into an even smaller bite-size step. So I gave the example of, okay, today I need to write chapter 1. That often can even be too big of a step. You need to break that down further. Okay, my task today on my Pomodoro 25-minute interval is to write the first paragraph of chapter 1. Introduce main character, or if you're starting with a scene description, write the opening paragraph. That actually usually takes me a very long time. The beginning scene and the ending scene, I spend the most amount of time on. So that would take me multiple days, honestly. And you're going to go back and refine it. But this forces you to kind of get through that task. You can go back and edit it at a later date. I just find that setting the timer when you know you're on the clock, for me, it's in the background, an alarm will ring at 25 minutes. And a lot of the time, the best thing is when you get into that state of flow and you just want to keep writing through the break until your allotted writing session is done. That's great. That's perfect. The Pomodoro technique is working for you in that sense. But sometimes it's nice to take that 5-minute pause, recalibrate, go to the bathroom, refill your mug of tea, come back and do another 25-minute sprint. This is just, I find, the best way for me when I'm really procrastinating, when I need to get something done, or I just have a 50-minute working session. Then I'll just put on the timer 2 Pomodoro sprints, 25 minutes, 25 minutes. And that's it. That's my writing session for the day. So whatever I get done, I get done. But at least I moved the needle forward a little bit further. And if you do that for 3 days a week, or you do that every Saturday, you will eventually have a completed manuscript. And this is just a way to block out the noise, prevents you from trying to multitask, do a million things. Time blocking, Pomodoro technique, I swear by it. You can use a free tool if you don't want to have your internet browser open and running in the background. I completely understand that. They have other little Pomodoro things that you can have on your desk, or just set your phone timer or another timer for 25 minutes. Take a 5-minute break. You can do your own Pomodoro technique. You don't need any extra fancy technology. And just fun fact, because I'm a history lover, I always need to research why things are called what they're called. Why is this called the Pomodoro Technique? Who invented it? So if you're interested and you're anything like me, this is the technique that was developed in the 1980s by Francisco Cirillo, an Italian college student who used a tomato-shaped kitchen timer to organize his study schedule into 25-minute increments. And the word Pomodoro is Italian for tomato. So that is how the Pomodoro technique came to be. Also, if you're in a writing group or you work with a writing partner, you can do this in tandem with someone else. You can check in with each other at the end of each interval on your 5 or 15-minute breaks, just as kind of like a quick motivation. All right, let's keep each other accountable. Let's go. I find that can be helpful sometimes. Also, like I said, experiment with the number of Pomodoros that you do per day. Find your sweet spot. And also, just if you don't have a lot of time, don't beat yourself up about it. Just do 1 Pomodoro, 25 minutes. If you dedicate to your writing, if that's what you start off with, that is amazing in itself. All you have to do is start. All right, the next productivity hack is one of my favorites. It's very simple and it's memorable. It's called Eat the Frog. So, the Eat the Frog method was popularized by a productivity consultant. His name is Brian Tracy. In his book, it's called Eat That Frog: 21 Great Ways to Stop Procrastinating and Get More Done in Less Time. And this one has always stuck with me. The main concept actually comes from a Mark Twain quote, and he said, "If it's your job to eat a frog, it's best to do it first thing in the morning. And if it's your job to eat two frogs, it's best to eat the biggest one first." I love that. Essentially, what this is identifying your number one, only one most important task for the day and doing it first thing right when you wake up in the morning. So you eat the frog. And if, like Mark Twain says, if you have many frogs, you eat the biggest one first. So the task that is the most challenging, that you keep putting off, that you're procrastinating, your hardest task, get that done first. And if it takes you all day into the next day, you eat that frog again the next day. Basically, you're not allowed to move on to the next task on your to-do list until you eat that first frog. Why I really love this one, even though it sounds super simple and you might be thinking that sounds insane, I can't just have one task on my to-do list. I assure you that you can. And it's really important to prioritize these high impact tasks and activities. And for me, when I think about eating the frog first thing in the morning, I always go back to this book by Cal Newport. It's called Deep Work. And I always want to champion the idea of deep work, especially, I say this ad nauseum, but in our attention economy, there's so many things pulling at our attention. Our brains aren't hardwired to absorb all of this information, scrolling through our phones, on our computers, even watching TV. We're just inundated with data at every turn. And that's why it's hard to write books. Really, truly, honestly, it's hard to sit down and devote time to this deep work, this really thought intensive activity of writing a manuscript, which can also be really fun, but it does take a lot of concentration and focus. So even if you have a to-do list and you find you're jumping all around trying to do the shorter tasks first, I get that feeling because you want to cross off as many things as possible. But we get stuck in a rut when we do that because it means that, yes, we're getting a lot done, but we're kind of spinning our wheels. Your to-do list is never going to be fully finished. We're never going to completely get to the bottom of it. There's always dishes to unload. There's always laundry to do. There's always a house to tidy. There's always things that you can add. So if you kind of keep spinning your wheels doing the same tasks, you're never going to get to those high impact, big picture goals like writing a book that you want to achieve in your life. So when you sit down to do this productivity hack, really put your energy and focus into the hardest thing, the thing that you procrastinate on. And I find it easy when I sit down to do this, knowing, okay, this is going to be hard. This isn't going to be easy. And just telling my brain that makes it somehow a little bit easier to sit down and do it because I know, all right, here I am. I'm going in for it. And then I always find it's a little bit easier than I think it is. And again, when you're eating the frog, when you're doing this one task, don't put on that list, write a book, because that's going to take way more than a day. It's not going to be finished, obviously. Like, that's a huge mountain to climb. But I find it most effective when you're breaking down the idea of writing a book, whether you do it by chapter or word count. If it's an 80,000 word book, break it down by word count per day or per week if you're not able to write every day, and have that little breakdown as your task for the day. So if you're going to write 500 words today, and even that might be too big of a task, 250 words, 300 words a day, whatever it may be that you find you're able to do that's manageable. If you have that as your big frog, and maybe you're even able to accomplish more, you're just going to feel so good about yourself if you sit down and say, okay, today I have to write 300 words. You end up writing 500. Amazing. Like, Rather than sitting there, I got to write 2,000 words today and you only write 500, you're going to feel like you accomplished something. So, eating the frog first thing in the morning, the activity, usually it's related to writing for me, that takes the most amount of time and energy that I feel is hard, that I keep putting off. Sometimes it's even just sending an email like that I know I have to draft or I'm going to have to be firm but fair. And I just keep putting off this email. That could be my highest impact task that day. And once I get that done, then you can move down your to-do list systematically. But eat the biggest frog first thing in the morning. All right, my next productivity hack is called the Eisenhower Matrix. This is another time management tool. This one, I use consistently when I am completely overwhelmed. I have a million things pulling at my attention that are on my to-do list that I'm so overloaded, I don't even know where to start. There's just so many things that I should be doing. I'll sit down with a blank piece of computer paper or my notebook, use my ruler, and I will make a quadrant. So you just write a cross. It's hard to explain verbally, but if you Google Eisenhower Matrix, a visual, a nice graph will come up. I will try to put one up here on the screen so you can see what the hell I'm talking about. It's very simple, but it's just a four-quadrant matrix, and you will take your entire brain dump, your entire huge long to-do list, and you will categorize it into these four different categories. So urgent and important, urgent, not important, and not important and not urgent. And you will see that obviously those ones that are not important and not urgent, once you put them into this matrix, those are ones that you should be able to hopefully eliminate off of your to-do list. Others, hopefully you can delegate those tasks. And then the important and urgent tasks, those are the ones that you prioritize. Everything else falls to the wayside until those tasks are done. So they have to be urgent, they have to have a time and a deadline associated to them, and they have to be important, big picture, high impact tasks that will, as I always say, move the needle closer to your big life goals. I always go back to these big picture goals because sometimes it's so easy for me to just be like, no, but the laundry has to get done, the house is a mess, all these other little things that really, at the end of the day, doesn't fully matter. They do matter. I want to caveat by saying they will get done eventually, but maybe they can get done after these bigger, high impact career goals that I have. I'm so ambitious. I have some really big goals coming up, and I'm so close to achieving a few of them that I just don't want to stop the momentum. And for the urgent part, if there's a task that you're realizing, okay, it's not that urgent, but it's important to me, it's in that other quadrant, maybe that's a task that you need to impose a deadline for yourself. Writing a book, I find, is one of those hard things to sometimes put in an Eisenhower matrix because if you don't have a literary agent yet, or you don't have a publisher who gives you a deadline, an editor is giving you a deadline for the edits that they need back. If you don't have someone else giving that to you, it's very easy to put it off and you will put it in a quadrant where you say, oh, it's not urgent. Your writing career is urgent. It is something that if you don't make it a top priority, it will never become actualized. There's this quote, again, I'm so sorry, I don't know who said it, but they said, if you treat writing like a hobby, it will pay you like a hobby. It will treat you like a hobby. It is just something that will always be on the back burner, on the side, a side hustle that you do for fun. And that's okay if that is your goal at the end of the day. So that's important to get really clear on it too. If you're making an Eisenhower matrix and you realize, you know what, based on all the other things in my life, this writing task, yeah, it's important, but it's not that urgent for me. Maybe you keep it in that quadrant and you just take a lot longer to get there and you realize this is something I just want to do for fun on the side. It's a creative outlet for me. I don't need to be a New York Times bestseller. I don't need this to be as financially lucrative as a full-time job. I don't really want to have that kind of pressure. I just want this to be something fun for me that I do without all of that. So this actually can help you get clear on your priorities as well. So this is a productivity hack that I really do like, and I come back to when I am super bogged down with a million little things, and I need to get super clear on what are the top priorities. All right, the fourth productivity hack is called the 333 method, and I learned about this from Oliver Burkeman in his book 4,000 Weeks. So the 333 method that he talks about in this book is you spend 3 hours on your most important task. Then after those 3 hours are up, you do three shorter tasks that you have been avoiding. So any little shorter tasks that have been in your doom pile, things that you just keep putting off for a rainy day, you do those. And then once you complete those, you do three maintenance tasks that help you keep your life in order. So anything that's related to like health or relationships or around the house. This could be a self-care activity. This could be going on a date night. This could be finally cleaning out your rain gutters. Anything that kind of helps maintain your life, your status quo in that sense. Those are the last three tasks that you get done. So the 333 task, 3 hours on the most important thing. Once you complete that, then you can move on to three shorter tasks that you have been avoiding. And then you move on to three maintenance tasks in any area of your life that help keep your life running smoothly. This is again a way to prioritize, to make sure it's kind of like eating the frog. You're getting the most important thing done first, but instead of working in 25-minute increments, going back to the Pomodoro technique, you have 3 hours to bang out as much as you can get done on that important task, then three short tasks, and then three maintenance tasks. So I really like this because it helps you categorize your life in a way. It helps you, again, prioritize the most important thing, always working on that high impact activity. And the 333 method just combines a bunch of the different productivity techniques that I really like all into one. So some days, usually on like a Saturday, I will say, okay, today I'm going to do the 333 method from Oliver Burkeman's 4,000 Weeks, and I will sit down, set a timer for 3 hours, see how much I can get done on my number one most important task. Then I'll do three shorter tasks from my doom pile. And then if I complete those shorter tasks, then I will move on to the three maintenance tasks. And again, if you're finding that those three shorter tasks are taking you a lot longer, maybe you move those to the next day or the next week in your 3 hour increment as your number one most important task. You'll find out if it's taking you a lot longer, you have to be really real with yourself and say, okay, this actually is more important. It's not a short, quick task on something that I've been avoiding. And then my last productivity hack is the hardest for me to implement, but arguably the most important one, and it's learning how to say no. Ultimately, learning how to say no is the number one most important productivity hack because if you don't know how to say no to things, you're ultimately saying yes to a distraction. It's an obstacle in the way of your productivity. So learning to say no, that's why it's the ultimate productivity hack. Again, very, very hard, especially for people pleasers like me. Oh my God, it gives me like an itch or a rash even just thinking about having to disappoint people. I always overestimate how much I can do, and I'm really learning, especially now being a new mother where time is limited, my energy, my capacity, I am stretched beyond belief. And I've had to learn how to say no, and it's so hard because sometimes it's to things that I want to say yes to. I just really don't have the bandwidth, and you have to look at, is this ultimately leading towards my big goal, finishing my book this year? If it's not moving the needle towards that, if you're saying yes to all these social activities and going out for dinners and drinks, every once in a while, that's okay. But if you're finding that you're actually spending more time doing that, socializing or going out or saying yes to work projects that are taking up a lot of your free time, or even saying yes to doing a favor for a friend on your one free day that you had already allotted to writing, it just over time deteriorates your confidence in yourself, and writing continuously gets pushed to the back burner. Writing and reading are things that people really do see as a luxury when you have to kind of make it more of a priority. I really get it's so hard to prioritize writing or even sitting down and reading because if we are saying no to someone else to do those things, we feel guilty. We feel like we're being selfish. We're re writing and reading. Yeah, I'm staying in tonight to work on my book that I don't know if it'll ever get published, but I can't go out for drinks with you, Cindy. It feels really weird to do that because in the short term, you want to go out and have fun. But if it isn't moving you towards your bigger goal, we have to get really tough with ourselves and prioritize and put ourselves first and say no. You can say no in a nice way. Just, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now. I have too much on my plate. Maybe we can revisit it in the future. I really appreciate you thinking of me. There are so many different ways to say no nicely. It doesn't have to be a harsh no. But I also really like the idea that no is a complete sentence. Again, very hard for me to do, but sometimes no is just a complete sentence. And oftentimes people don't even care what your reason is. They just want to know, are you in or are you out? So, yeah, sometimes just you don't even have to give a reason. If you want to just prioritize your writing, if you want to prioritize cozying up with a cup of tea and reading, reading is related to writing. It helps you get into the flow of sentence structure and how dialogue sounds. So, even staying in to read one night is also moving you closer towards your goals. So, I just want us to all collectively, all of us writers and fellow people pleasers out there, to be kinder to ourselves. It's not selfish to say no and put our writing life first. So, those are my top 5 productivity hacks to help you become a more efficient writer. Just to quickly recap, run through them all. We have number 1, the Pomodoro Technique. Number 2, eat the frog. Number 3, the Eisenhower Matrix. Number 4, the 3-3-3 method. And number 5, learning how to say no. That is all I have for you in today's episode. I hope you liked listening to it. I hope you learned something. If you did, please share this on social media, in your Instagram stories, text it to a friend, leave a review on iTunes or Spotify. It just helps more people find out about the Word Weaver, and I appreciate it so much. All right, happy reading, happy writing, happy life. I will chat with you in the next episode. Bye.